Have you ever noticed that the people who crave real love the most are often the ones who have to wait the longest for it? Not the kind of love that fills space or quiets loneliness, but the kind that feels true, deep, and soul-aligned. If you are watching this, chances are you have carried a quiet question for years, one you rarely say out loud. Why does love seem to come so easily to others while you are left standing at the edge, feeling unseen, misunderstood, or somehow out of time? This feeling is not random. It is the signature of a rare soul, an old soul, a high-vibration individual whose inner world is more complex, more sensitive, and more honest than most. Your sensitivity is not a weakness. It is a form of intelligence that works in the shadows. You feel more, you notice more, you cannot pretend that something is false, even if pretending would make life easier. And because of that, love has never been simple for you. Here is the uncomfortable truth that few people talk about. Love comes late to rare souls, not because they are unworthy, but because they are precise. While others learn to bond through habit, fear, or convenience, you are wired to seek meaning. You sense when a connection is empty, even if it looks perfect from the outside. You feel when someone wants comfort rather than truth. And deep down, you know that entering the wrong love would cost you something essential. So your soul hesitates, even when your mind is tired of waiting. Carl Jung understood this paradox deeply. He believed that the psyche has its own timing, one that does not follow social expectations or cultural milestones. For certain individuals, especially those on a path of individuation, life delays the very things they desire most until they are capable of receiving them without losing themselves. From this perspective, your loneliness was never abandonment. It was preparation. Think about it. Every disappointment you survived sharpened your discernment. Almost every relationship taught you what connection is not. Every season of solitude forced you to build an inner life rather than escape into another person. While others were learning how to merge, you were learning how to stand. While others were distracted by noise, you were quietly developing depth. This is why watching others fall in love can feel painful and confusing. It is not jealousy, it is grief mixed with hope. Grief for the intimacy you have not yet known, and hope that when it arrives, it will be real. The universe is not cruel for making you wait. It is selective. It knows that shallow love would not satisfy you. It knows that false intimacy would slowly erode your spirit. So it delays not to deny, but to refine. What if the waiting was not a sign that something was wrong with you, but proof that something rare was forming within you? What if love has been late because it is being prepared to meet you at your depth, not your desperation? This is the foundation of the journey we are about to explore, because for rare souls, love does not arrive when you are searching for it. It arrives when you are finally ready to meet it without abandoning yourself. There comes a strange season in your life when everything begins to feel off. You sit across from someone on a date and smile politely, but something inside you quietly withdraws. You scroll through messages, reply to texts, even laugh at jokes. But deep down, you feel like a ghost moving through a world that no longer reflects you. You attend dinners, show up to family events, and even try to keep your heart open, but nothing sticks. It's not rejection that's haunting you. It's the haunting absence of resonance. What if you're not meant to resonate with what the world expects of you anymore? What if this growing numbness is not a flaw, but a signal? A quiet alarm that you're approaching a spiritual threshold? This is where many rare souls find themselves, caught between the familiar and the unknown, unable to go back to shallow connections but uncertain how to move forward without companionship. You're not alone in this paradox. It's the quiet epidemic of emotionally awakened adults, especially those around midlife, who have checked every box, career, family, stability, and still feel empty in rooms full of people. You try to engage, you try to care, but there's a quiet voice inside whispering, "This isn't it." Carl Jung called this the withdrawal from the collective unconscious. It's a sacred disorientation, an inner rebellion against scripted connections. You are no longer able to participate in relationships built on roles, masks, or silent expectations. The friendships that once felt comforting now feel obligatory. The flirtations that once thrilled you now seem performative. Even your own patterns begin to irritate you, not because you're broken, but because your psyche is attempting to shed a skin it has long outgrown. Think about how strange this is. You're doing all the right things, but they no longer bring you peace. You're around others, but it feels lonelier than being alone. You used to chase connections. Now you crave authenticity so much that even half-hearted affection feels like a betrayal of your soul. It's disorienting. And if you're not careful, you might start believing that something is wrong with you, when in reality, something is waking up. This is the painful brilliance of individuation. According to Jung, the soul cannot truly awaken while still clinging to the approval of the group. It must experience the loneliness of truth before it can hold the weight of love. That's why the universe begins pulling you away from everything that no longer fits. Not in dramatic explosions, but in quiet misalignments. Conversations that no longer inspire you. Eyes that don't truly see you. Intimacy that leaves you lonelier than silence. And here's the strangest part. You might still want it. You might still long for someone to reach across the void and say, "I see you." But deep down, you know it cannot come from just anyone. You're not lonely for company. You're lonely for truth. So ask yourself, what if this isn't loneliness at all? What if it's a spiritual detox? What if you're not meant to feel right in places that no longer carry the frequency of your soul? And what if the universe is not punishing you with isolation, but finally removing every echo that ever kept you from hearing your own voice clearly? Drop a comment if you've ever felt this kind of loneliness around people you used to love. Did you think something was wrong with you, or did you sense that something deeper was shifting inside you? Let's talk about it. Just when your solitude begins to harden into resignation, something unexpected happens. You meet someone, and without warning, the silence you once accepted as your only companion is pierced by the echo of familiarity in a stranger's voice. They don't just listen, they seem to recognize something in you. It feels like relief, like coming home, like destiny has finally remembered your address. But here's the part no one warns you about. What if this breathtaking connection isn't fate, but a mirror? It sounds beautiful to say, they feel like home. But what if what you're calling home is really your unfinished self, reflected back through the anima or animus? Carl Jung believed that in romantic love, we rarely fall in love with the actual person in front of us. We fall in love with the hidden, disowned pieces of ourselves that we unconsciously project onto them. The parts of us we haven't yet met in the mirror of our own self-awareness. This is why it feels electric. This is why you can feel seen even when they barely know you. Because you're not only seeing them, you're seeing you, the warm, wise, intuitive part of you you've buried for years. That's her. The strong, silent, masculine calm you never felt safe enough to embody? That's him. The magic is real. But so is the illusion. It's a strange contradiction. You can feel deeply connected to someone and still not be known by them at all. Many people in their midlife, especially those who've spent years doing emotional healing work, fall into this trap. After years of being unseen, they meet someone who mirrors their inner beauty back to them, and they mistake it for complete love. But here's the problem. If you are only loved for the parts of you they project, then the rest of you remains in shadow. And love that only embraces the light in you will eventually make you feel unseen in new ways. Think about it. Maybe you've had this experience. You meet someone after a divorce, after a long silence, or after finally learning how to be alone. The connection is immediate. You talk for hours. You share stories you've never told anyone. They say all the right things. But slowly, a quiet anxiety begins to stir beneath the magic. You sense that they're in love with an image of you, a version of you that doesn't yet know grief, that doesn't yet speak your deepest truth, that hasn't shown its rough edges or rage or doubt. And suddenly, the same person who once made you feel radiant begins to make you feel edited, afraid to bring your whole self to the table. This isn't manipulation, it's a projection. And Jung warned us, what begins in projection ends in disillusionment unless we wake up before the spell breaks. So ask yourself, is it really love, or is it recognition? Is it a soul meeting or a psychic mirror? And perhaps most importantly, do they truly see you? Or are they in love with the version of you that makes them feel whole? If you've ever felt destiny, but later realized you were only loved for a part of who you are, share your story below. Did you stay quiet to preserve the connection? Or did you risk revealing your wholeness and watch the fantasy fall apart? Let's talk about it. The difference between being recognized and being loved might be the most important lesson of your healing. What if the reason you keep walking away is not that something is wrong with them, but because something unfamiliar is happening inside you? Here is the unsettling truth most people never consider. Real love often feels threatening, not comforting, when your identity was built around surviving without it. When a genuinely suitable person finally enters your life, the reaction is rarely joy. It is confusing. The mind that once begged for connection suddenly begins to panic. You start noticing small flaws. The timing feels off. The chemistry feels quieter than expected. You tell yourself you should feel more excitement, more fire, more certainty. And slowly, almost politely, you pull away. This is where many rare souls misunderstand themselves. They assume they are being intuitive, discerning, or spiritually cautious. But Carl Jung would say something deeper is happening. The psyche is protecting an identity it has grown used to. If you survived by being independent, misunderstood, or emotionally self-sufficient, then intimacy threatens the very structure that kept you safe. Think about how this shows up in real life. A woman who spent years being emotionally abandoned may finally meet someone consistent and emotionally available. He texts back. He shows up. He listens. Instead of relief, she feels restless. She misses the emotional highs and lows. She tells herself it feels boring, even though nothing is actually wrong. Or consider someone who has always been the strong one, the helper, the wise friend. When someone offers to hold them instead, they feel exposed, awkward, even weak. So they retreat. Jung called this the shadow at work. The shadow is not evil. It is the part of you that formed to survive early pain. If your shadow learned that love meant loss, confusion, or self-erasure, then real intimacy activates old alarms. Your nervous system does not recognize safety. It recognizes familiarity. And familiarity often looks like distance, struggle, or longing. This is why fantasy connections feel easier. When love stays just out of reach, you remain in control. You can idealize, you can hope, you can suffer nobly. But when someone actually chooses you fully, consistently, and without games, there is nowhere left to hide, no role to perform, no pain to prove your depth. Real love asks you to step out of the story that made sense of your suffering. The shocking part is this: many people reject real love not because they are afraid of being hurt, but because they are afraid of losing the identity that pain gave them. If you have spent years seeing yourself as the one who endures, who waits, who understands, who loves deeply without being met, then being fully loved creates a strange emptiness. Who are you without the struggle? The universe does not interfere at this stage, it steps back. Jung believed that individuation requires choice, conscious choice. The psyche must decide whether it wants to repeat what is familiar or risk becoming something new. This is the final test before true love. Not whether love arrives, but whether you can receive it without testing it, doubting it, or trying to make it disappear. So ask yourself honestly, when someone shows up calmly, consistently, and clearly, do you feel peace or discomfort? Do you feel drawn forward or secretly relieved when it ends? And most importantly, are you rejecting the person, or are you protecting an old version of yourself that no longer needs to exist? If this resonates, share in the comments. Have you ever walked away from something good because it felt unfamiliar or quiet? Your answer may reveal more about your healing than any relationship ever did. It doesn't begin with a breakup or a loss. It begins in silence, when the roles you've always played stop feeling like home. When the armor of being the strong one suddenly feels heavy. When the validation you once chased no longer fills the hollow inside. This stage of your transformation isn't about people walking away. It's about who you are when the applause stops, the pain quiets, and the story you've wrapped around your worth begins to unravel. What if the person you're afraid of losing is the version of yourself that only knew how to survive? Carl Jung called this part of the journey individuation, the sacred undoing of who you were told to be, so you can remember who you really are. But here's the hard truth most people never admit. Many of us have unconsciously built our identities around emotional pain, around rejection, around feeling invisible, always needing to prove something. So when the chaos calms, when someone finally sees us without needing to be convinced, we begin to feel unanchored. Not because something is wrong, but because something old is dying. Think about this in your own life. Have you ever felt more comfortable being the misunderstood one, the fixer, the emotionally unavailable one, or the one who always gives more than they receive? These roles feel noble, even spiritual, but Jung would say they are often defenses, masks shaped by wounds. Real-life example. Consider a man who has always been the silent protector, never asking for help. His strength was admired. But when his partner begins to emotionally open up to him, to offer him space to be vulnerable, he recoils. Not because he doesn't care, but because without his armor, he feels exposed, weak, unfamiliar with himself. Or a woman who has been praised her entire life for being independent, for never needing a man. When a relationship arrives that offers mutual support and presence, she may begin to sabotage it, not because she doesn't want love, but because being received without needing to perform threatens the very story that once made her feel worthy. This is the hidden collapse that no one talks about, not the collapse of a marriage or a friendship, the collapse of the inner narrative that kept you safe, the myth that being too deep, too intense, or too kind was the reason you were always alone. When someone actually meets you in your wholeness, this story begins to lose power, and it can feel like grief, because you are not just letting go of pain, You are letting go of the identity built to survive it. This is not depression. This is recalibration. It is the moment your soul turns away from suffering as proof of worth and begins to seek peace as its natural state. You stop craving struggle. You stop needing to be chosen to feel valuable. You begin to experience something deeper than happiness: alignment. But here's the curious question. If you've always seen yourself as the one who loves the deepest, who carries the emotional weight, who heals others, who are you when no one needs saving? Who are you when peace finally finds you, but you no longer recognize yourself in it? Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But that privilege requires sacrifice, not of others, of the identity you built inside your wounds. So I'll ask you this. Is it possible that your greatest fear is not losing someone else, but losing the version of you that only existed in pain? If this speaks to you, share in the comments. What version of yourself are you being asked to release? And who might you become without the armor? It often arrives quietly, not as heartbreak, but as a strange stillness where the hunger for love suddenly feels exhausted. And here is the unsettling question few people dare to ask themselves. What if the reason love has not arrived yet is because you are still reaching for it instead of standing whole without it? This is the paradox at the heart of the journey for rare souls. After years of longing, learning, losing, and releasing identities built on pain, the universe introduces a final and deeply uncomfortable test. It asks you to stop searching. Not because love is unimportant, but because the search itself reveals an unfinished inner contract. Many people say they want a partnership, but what they unconsciously want is relief. Relief from loneliness, relief from self-doubt, relief from the burden of carrying life alone. Jung warned that when love is sought as medicine, it becomes a projection rather than a meeting. In real life, this test often shows up in subtle ways. You may notice that you no longer feel desperate to text back quickly. You stop refreshing dating apps. You feel less urgency to define where things are going. Friends might tell you that you seem distant or too independent. Some may even say you have become cold. But internally, something profound is happening. You are no longer asking another person to confirm your value. You are beginning to live as if your worth is already settled. Consider a woman who spent years healing after a painful relationship. She worked on herself, learned her patterns, and promised she would never repeat the same mistakes. Yet, deep inside, she still believed that meeting the right partner would finally prove she was healed. When she reached a point where she genuinely enjoyed her life alone, something unexpected happened. The desire to impress faded. The fear of being left softened. She stopped auditioning. That inner shift was not resignation, it was completion. From a Jungian perspective, this is the threshold of individuation. Jung believed that true partnership can only exist between two whole individuals, not two halves seeking completion. When you are still waiting to be chosen, loved, or rescued, you unconsciously invite dynamics that mirror that incompleteness. You may attract people who are unavailable, inconsistent, or unable to meet you fully. Not because you deserve it, but because the psyche is still rehearsing an old lesson. This final test asks something radical. Can you live as if love may come or may not and still feel anchored? Can you build a life that feels meaningful even if no one arrives to witness it? This is where many people panic, because without longing, they fear emptiness. Without the chase, they fear stagnation. But Jung would say, this fear is the ego resisting wholeness. The ego survives on tension. The self rests in integration. In everyday terms, this might look like choosing peace over excitement. choosing clarity over intensity, choosing solitude over situationships that keep you emotionally hooked but spiritually depleted. It might mean saying no to someone who almost fits, because almost is no longer enough. This is not arrogance, it is alignment. Here is the quiet truth. When love is no longer needed to heal you, it can finally meet you. When you stop waiting to be chosen, you become recognizable to someone who is also choosing freely. The universe is not testing your patience, it is testing your wholeness. So, let me ask you this. If love never arrived to save you, would you still feel complete? And if the answer is yes, are you ready for what comes next? Share your thoughts below. At what point did you realize you were no longer waiting, but standing whole? It doesn't come with fireworks. It doesn't arrive as a high or a rush. It does not shake the ground beneath your feet the way trauma once did. Instead, when true love finally meets you on the other side of your becoming, it walks in quietly, and it stays. No games, no chases, just the steady recognition of something rare. Another soul who has done the inner work to meet you without needing to complete you. By this stage, something inside you has shifted. You no longer confuse anxiety for attraction or intensity for intimacy. You don't shrink yourself to be palatable, nor do you perform strength to keep someone interested. You are no longer seeking a mirror to validate you. You are seeking a mirror to reflect truth, not perfection, but presence, not fantasy, but real human depth. That is the power of individuation. Carl Jung believed that only those who have reconciled their own inner opposites are capable of meeting another without dissolving into them, without needing to disappear to belong. In real life, this might look like simple, quiet mornings where nothing feels like it needs to be fixed. You're not decoding text messages. You're not replaying conversations in your head, wondering if you said too much. You're not afraid of being fully seen. The relationship doesn't demand that you dim your light to maintain harmony. You feel spacious, not suffocated, loved, not managed, and most importantly, you remain yourself. One of Jung's most powerful truths is this: every relationship activates parts of our psyche that we have not yet integrated. But in an individuated relationship, those activations don't become war zones. They become doorways. Differences are not threats. They are invitations to grow without losing the core of who you are. This kind of love does not require you to compromise your essence. It asks that you bring your wholeness to the table. Many people over 35 reach a stage where they are no longer willing to be someone else's fantasy. They are done playing roles. They crave reality. They want a connection that feels like breath, not battle. But here's the paradox. To have that, you must first become the kind of person who does not abandon themselves for connection. You must choose peace over passion that burns you out. You must choose resonance over attention. And when you do, you become a frequency that only another whole being can recognize. This is what the universe was preparing you for all along. The delay was not punishment, it was precision. Every heartbreak refined your boundaries, every disappointment recalibrated your standards, every moment of solitude taught you how to love without attachment and to walk away without resentment. It taught you how to hold yourself so completely that love, when it arrives, becomes a shared overflow, not a lifeline. So when you meet that person, and you will, you won't feel like you're losing your freedom. You'll feel like you're sharing it. You won't feel like you're giving yourself away. You'll feel like you're expanding. That is when you'll know this is the real thing. Not because it completes you, but because it doesn't ask you to be anything but who you already are. Now ask yourself this: when love arrives, will you be ready to receive it without vanishing into it? Or will you still be waiting for someone to give you what you were always meant to give yourself? Comment below. What does meeting love without losing yourself mean to you? Your story may help someone else recognize theirs. If this touched something sacred inside you, don't let it fade into silence. Like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your presence here is not just support, it's resonance. And if you feel moved to give back, your donation becomes a quiet but powerful gesture that helps keep this light alive for others still walking in the dark.